Clara May Whitmore's knees hit the frozen ground, her arms wrapped around her youngest, while 6 other children huddled against her back. The snow fell like a burial shroud over Main Street, and not a single soul in Willowbrook moved to help. "Please," she whispered through cracked lips. "My children." But the townsfolk kept walking, every last one of them. Then heavy boots stopped in front of her. A man's rough hand reached down. "Ma'am, you and your young'uns are coming with me. If you want to know how one cowboy's decision changed everything, stay until the end, and comment what city you're watching from, so I can see how far this story travels." The first snowflake of winter landed on baby Grace's cheek, and Clara May Whitmore knew they were out of time. "Mama, I'm cold." Ruth's small voice barely carried above the wind. Clara pulled the 4-year-old closer, shifting Grace to her other hip. The weight of both children made her arms burn, but she couldn't stop. Not yet. Not with 5 more walking behind her. "I know, baby. Just a little further." She didn't know if that was true. She'd been saying it for 3 days now. "Sam." Clara's voice came out sharper than she intended. "Keep Ben moving. Don't let him fall behind." Her eldest son, 14 and trying so hard to be a man, grabbed his younger brother's arm. "Come on, Ben, move your feet." "I can't feel my feet," Ben whimpered. 8 years old and already learning that the world didn't care about a child suffering. "You can feel 'em just fine." Sam's voice was firm but gentle. "You're just being dramatic. Whitmore men don't complain." Clara's throat tightened. Sam sounded exactly like his father used to before the drinking turned Thomas into someone else entirely. Before the fists. Before the mind collapse that ended everything. "Mama." Josie appeared at her elbow, 12 years old, with eyes too old for her face. "Maggie's crying again. She won't tell me why." Clara looked back at her 10-year-old daughter, watching Maggie's shoulders shake with silent sobs. She knew why. Maggie always cried when they approached a new town. The memory of doors slamming in their faces had taught her what to expect. "Stay with her, Josie. Hold her hand." "Yes, Mama." 6-year-old Ellie stumbled, and Sam caught her before she hit the ground. "I got you, Ellie. Just hold on to my coat." This was her family now. 7 children ranging from 14 years to 2 years old, and not a single one of them had eaten since yesterday morning. The last of their bread was gone. The last of their money had bought passage on a wagon that dropped them 5 miles outside of Willowbrook, Montana. The driver hadn't wanted to take them any further. "Town don't take kindly to strangers," he'd said, not meeting Clara's eyes. "Especially not ones in your situation." Your situation. Clara had heard those words in 3 different towns over the past 18 months. They always meant the same thing. Widow, 7 children, no husband to vouch for her, no money, no prospects, no hope. But Willowbrook was the end of the line. There was nowhere else to go. Winter was closing in fast, and her children wouldn't survive another week on the road. "Look, Mama." Ellie's voice lifted with excitement. "I can see buildings." Clara's heart lurched. Through the swirling snow, she could make out the dark shapes of structures. A town, shelter, possibility, or another door slammed in their faces. "Listen to me." Clara stopped turning to face all 7 of her children. They gathered around her, a ragged circle of thin faces and threadbare coats. "When we get to town, you let Mama do the talking. You stay quiet and polite. You say yes, ma'am, and no, sir to everyone. You understand?" 7 heads nodded. "And no matter what anyone says to us, no matter how they look at us, you hold your heads up. We are Whitmores. We don't beg. We don't grovel. We work for what we need." "Yes, Mama," they chorused. Clara shifted Grace again and started walking. The snow was falling harder now, the wind cutting through her worn shawl like it wasn't there. Her fingers had gone numb an hour ago. She couldn't feel her toes. None of that mattered. Only getting her children to shelter mattered. Main Street of Willowbrook stretched before them like a judgment. Clara counted the buildings through the snow. General store, bank, saloon, church with a white steeple, boarding house with a sign swinging in the wind. And people. Everywhere people. They stopped what they were doing to stare as Clara led her children down the street. A woman clutched her husband's arm and whispered something behind her hand. Two men outside the saloon exchanged looks and shook their heads. A mother pulled her child closer as if poverty were contagious. Clara had seen it all before. The judgment, the fear, the cruelty dressed up as righteousness. She walked past them all, heading straight for the boarding house. The sign read, "Finch's Boarding House, rooms available." If she could just get inside. If she could just find work, any work she could keep her children fed and warm. The door was heavy. Clara pushed it open with her shoulder, ushering her children inside before following them into the warmth. A woman stood behind a counter, gray hair pulled back in a severe bun, spectacles perched on a sharp nose. Her eyes swept over Clara's family, like an inventory being assessed. "Can I help you?" "I'm looking for a room, ma'am." Clara kept her voice steady. "And work. I can cook, clean, do laundry, mend clothes, whatever you need." The woman's eyebrows rose. "All these children yours?" "Yes, ma'am." "Father?" Clara's jaw tightened. "Dead. 18 months now." "I see." The woman came around the counter, moving closer. Her eyes lingered on baby Grace's thin face, on Ruth's chattering teeth, on the way Ben swayed on his feet from exhaustion and hunger. "How long since these young'uns ate?" Clara's pride warred with her children's need. Need one. "Yesterday, ma'am. Morning." Something shifted in the older woman's expression. "My name is Martha Finch. You are Clara May Whitmore." "Well, Mrs. Whitmore." Martha Finch turned toward a door at the back. "I've got stew on the stove and bread in the oven. You get those children fed first. Then we'll talk about rooms and work." Clara's knees nearly buckled. "Ma'am, I should tell you I don't have much money, but I'll work for whatever we eat. I'll work double, triple—" "I said we'd talk later." Martha's voice was gruff, but not unkind. "Right now, you look about ready to fall over, and those babies need food. Through that door down the hall, kitchen's on the left." "Thank you." Clara's voice cracked. "Thank you, ma'am." "Don't thank me yet. You haven't tasted my stew." The children filed past, following their mother toward the kitchen. Martha Finch watched them go, counting heads. 7 children. 1 woman. A story that probably broke hearts and hardened faces in equal measure. She'd seen it before. Too many times. The kitchen was warm, gloriously warm, and the smell of beef stew made Clara's stomach cramp with hunger. She settled her children around a long wooden table, baby Grace in her lap, and Martha Finch served them without comment. For several minutes, the only sound was spoons against bowls and the desperate gulping of children who'd learned that meals weren't guaranteed. "Slow down." Clara's voice was gentle but firm. "You'll make yourselves sick." "Yes, Mama." But the eating barely slowed. Martha brought Clara a bowl and a thick slice of bread. "Eat. You look worse than they do." "I'm fine." "You're lying." Martha sat down across from her. "A mother always feeds her children first. I know how it works. Now eat, or you won't be any good to anyone." Clara ate. The stew was simple but good, and warmth spread through her body for the first time in days. She hadn't realized how cold she'd been until she started to thaw. "So," Martha's voice was matter-of-fact. "Where you coming from?" "Copper Falls. Before that, Silver Creek. Before that—" "I get the picture." Martha's eyes were sharp. "Running from something or running to something?" "Neither." Clara set down her spoon. "Running from people who think a widow with 7 children is a scandal. Running to anywhere that'll let us stay." "What happened to your husband?" "Mine collapse. He was a miner in Kansas City." "And his family?" Clara's face hardened. "They blamed me for his death. Said I couldn't keep him home where he belonged, so he had to work the mines. Said 7 children were too many mouths that I'd driven him to drink trying to provide for us all. Had you... The question was blunt, almost brutal. Clara appreciated it more than she could say. My husband drank because my husband liked to drink. He hit because he liked to hit. He worked the mines because it was the only job that would take him after he got fired from everywhere else. Clara's voice was steady, emotionless. She'd cried all her tears long ago. When he died, I mourned the man he used to be, not the man he'd become. His family threw us out with nothing but the clothes on our backs. I've been trying to keep my children alive ever since. Martha was quiet for a long moment. That's a hard road. It is. Most women in your position would have given up some of those children. Orphanage would take them, give them a better chance than starving on the road. Clara's arms tightened around baby Grace. I would die first. They're mine, all 7 of them. We stay together or we don't stay at all. Even if keeping them together means they go hungry. Even then. Clara met the older woman's eyes without flinching. A full belly doesn't mean much if your heart is empty. My children know they're loved. They know they belong. They know their mother will never ever abandon them. That's worth more than 3 meals a day. Martha Finch studied her for a long moment. Then she nodded, something like respect flickering in her weathered face. I've got a room. Small, but there's 2 beds and floor space for pallets. It's not much. It's enough. I can pay you a small wage for cooking and cleaning. Won't be much, but it'll keep you fed and warm through winter. Clara's throat tightened. Why, you don't know me. You don't owe me anything. I know enough. Martha stood gathering empty bowls. I know a woman fighting for her children when I see one. I know courage when it walks through my door half frozen with 7 young'uns in tow. I know... She paused, something old and painful crossing her face. I know what it's like to need help and have none offered. Thank you, Mrs. Finch. I won't let you down. See that you don't. Martha's voice was gruff again, the moment of softness past. Now get those children settled. You all look like you could sleep for a week. Clara gathered her family and followed Martha upstairs to a small room at the end of the hall. It was simple, plain, barely big enough for all of them. It was the most beautiful room Clara had ever seen. This is ours, Ellie whispered, her eyes wide. For now, baby. If we work hard and behave, maybe for longer. Sam was already organizing his siblings, helping Josie make pallets on the floor from spare blankets Martha provided. Maggie had stopped crying, though she still clung to Josie's hand. Ben was examining the window, watching the snow fall. Mama, Ruth tugged at Clara's skirt. Can we stay here forever? I don't know, sweetheart. Clara knelt down, cupping her daughter's face. But I promise you, wherever we go together. That's forever. You understand? Ruth nodded solemnly. By the time all 7 children were settled, the room was dim with evening light. Clara sat in the single chair by the window, baby Grace finally asleep in her arms, and watched her children drift off one by one. They were safe. For tonight at least they were safe. She didn't realize she was crying until a tear dropped onto Grace's forehead. Clara wiped it away quickly, but more came. Silent tears of relief and exhaustion and grief for the life she'd imagined versus the life she'd gotten. A knock at the door made her stiffen. She wiped her face quickly. Yes. Martha Finch opened the door a crack. Just checking you got everything you need. Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Martha hesitated. Mrs. Whitmore, I should warn you about something. Clara's stomach dropped. Here it came. The catch, the condition, the price. There's a woman in this town named Prudence Ashworth. Her husband's the mayor. She runs the Ladies' Society, and she's got opinions about women like you. Women like me. Women with children and no husbands. Women who don't fit her idea of respectability. Martha's jaw tightened. She's already heard about you, I'm sure. News travels fast in Willowbrook. She'll come for you. Try to run you out or worse. I've dealt with women like her before. Not like Prudence, you haven't. Martha's voice was grim. She's got power in this town. Real power. She's destroyed people for less than being a widow with 7 children. Clara lifted her chin. Then I'll deal with her when she comes. I'm not leaving Mrs. Finch. I've run from 3 towns already. My children deserve better than a mother who keeps running. Martha studied her for a long moment. Then she smiled, the expression transforming her severe face into something almost warm. I believe you might actually mean that. I do. Good. Martha stepped back. Because Prudence Ashworth is going to test that resolve. Count on it. The door closed and Clara was left alone with her sleeping children and the knowledge that tomorrow would bring new battles. But tonight they were warm. Tonight they were fed. Tonight they were together. It would have to be enough. Outside the snow continued to fall, blanketing Willowbrook in white silence. And somewhere in that town, in a warm house with expensive curtains and righteous certainty, Prudence Ashworth was already planning her response to the widow with 7 children who had dared to seek shelter in her town. The storm was coming. Clara could feel it in her bones, the same way she'd felt every storm before. But she was done running from weather. Morning came gray and cold, but Clara was already awake, having slept no more than a few hours. She left the children sleeping. Baby Grace tucked safely between Ruth and Ellie, and made her way down to the kitchen. You're up early, Martha observed, already kneading bread dough. Early bird gets to keep her job. Clara tied on an apron. What needs doing? Everything. Martha nodded toward the stove. Coffee first. Then breakfast for 12 boarders who'll expect it hot and ready by 7. Clara set to work without another word. Her hands remembered the rhythm of kitchen labor, the comfort of productive motion. Eggs cracked, bacon, sizzled biscuits went into the oven. By the time the first boarders stumbled down for breakfast, the table was set and the food was steaming. New cook? A grizzled man in mining clothes eyed Clara suspiciously. New helper, Martha corrected. Mrs. Whitmore. She'll be handling the cooking from now on. Whitmore. Another boarder younger with a clerk's soft hands looked up from his coffee. The widow who came in yesterday with all them children. Clara's spine stiffened, but her voice stayed calm. That would be me, sir. Heard there was 7 of 'em. The miner shook his head. 7 children and no husband. That's a heavy load for a woman. It is what it is. Clara served him his eggs. Will there be anything else, sir? Just more coffee. She poured it, grateful when the conversation turned to other things. Mining prospects, the coming winter, politics in Washington that seemed impossibly far from this small Montana town. But she felt eyes on her throughout the meal, calculating, judging, waiting to see what kind of woman she really was. Let them look. She had nothing to hide. The morning passed in a blur of dishes and cleaning and checking on her children who'd been given strict instructions to stay in the room and mind the younger ones. Sam was proving his worth as usual, keeping Ben from mischief and reading to the girls from the single book Clara had managed to keep through all their travels. It was nearly noon when the front door of the boarding house banged open with enough force to rattle the windows. Where is she? The voice was sharp, commanding, accustomed to being obeyed. Clara emerged from the kitchen, wiping her hands on her apron, and found herself face to face with Prudence Ashworth. She knew immediately who it was. The expensive dress, immaculate despite the weather. The rigid posture. The eyes that swept over Clara like she was something unpleasant scraped off a shoe. Mrs. Ashworth. Martha Finch stepped between them. What can I do for you? You can explain why you're harboring this person in a respectable establishment. Prudence's voice dripped with contempt. I've heard all about her. 7 children and no husband. Wandering from town to town like a vagrant. What kind of example does that set for our community? Clara stepped forward. Ma'am, I'm not looking to set any examples. I'm just looking to work and care for my children. Work. Prudence laughed, a cold, brittle sound. Is that what they're calling it now? A woman traveling alone with 7 children. No husband in sight, no family, no references. We all know what kind of woman does that. The implication hung in the air like poison. Clara's hands clenched at her sides, but her voice stayed level. I'm a widow, ma'am. My husband died in a mine collapse 18 months ago. I have 7 children because I was married for 14 years to a man who gave them to me. Whatever you're implying, you're wrong. Am I? Prudence moved closer. I've made inquiries. You've been run out of 3 towns in the past year. 3 towns full of decent people who wanted nothing to do with you. What does that tell me about your character? It tells you that decent people can be cruel when they're scared of what they don't understand. Prudence's face flushed with anger. How dare you? No, ma'am. Clara's voice hardened. How dare you? You don't know me. You don't know my children. You don't know what we've survived or what we've lost. But you barge in here throwing accusations and insults, acting like you have some God-given right to judge people you've never met. The room went silent. Even Martha looked stunned by Clara's directness. Prudence recovered quickly, her expression settling into cold fury. You will not speak to me that way. My husband is the mayor of this town. I have influence you cannot begin to imagine. I could have you thrown out of here by nightfall. Then do it. Clara stepped closer, close enough to see the surprise flicker in Prudence's eyes. Do it, Mrs. Ashworth. Throw me out. Throw out my 7 children into the snow. But know this. Everyone in this town will see exactly what kind of woman you really are. Not Christian, not charitable, just cruel. The silence stretched between them, taut as a wire. You will regret this, Prudence finally said, her voice shaking with rage. I will make certain of it. She turned and swept out the door, slamming behind her. Clara's knees went weak. She grabbed the counter to steady herself, her heart pounding. Well, Martha's voice was thoughtful. You've got more spine than I gave you credit for. I shouldn't have done that. I should have been polite, apologized, begged. No. Martha's voice was firm. You did exactly right. Prudence Ashworth's been bullying this town for 20 years. About time someone stood up to her. But my children, if she makes good on her threat, let me worry about that. Martha handed her a cup of coffee. Drink this. You're shaking like a leaf. Clara took the cup with trembling hands. She won't let this go. No, she won't. Martha's expression was grim but determined. But she's not the only one with influence in Willowbrook. There's others who've been waiting for someone to push back against her. You might have just started something. I just want to keep my children safe and fed. I don't want to start anything. Sometimes we don't get to choose. Martha patted her arm awkwardly. Go check on your young'uns. I'll handle the lunch service today. Clara nodded and made her way upstairs, her mind racing. She'd made an enemy today, a powerful one. Everything she'd built in the past 24 hours, the fragile safety she'd found, could be torn away with a word from Prudence Ashworth. But as she opened the door to find her children waiting, 7 faces turning toward her with trust and hope, Clara knew she'd do it again. Some things were worth fighting for, even when the fight seemed impossible to win. Mama! Ruth ran to her, wrapping small arms around her legs. Ben said we have to leave again. He said a mean lady is going to make us go. Clara knelt down, gathering Ruth close. We're not going anywhere, baby. Not if I have anything to say about it. Promise. Clara looked at her daughter's face, then at the faces of all her children, watching her with fear and hope tangled together. I promise. She didn't know if she could keep that promise, but she would die trying. The days that followed Prudence Ashworth's visit settled into an uneasy rhythm. Clara worked from before dawn until well past dark, her hands raw from scrubbing and her back aching from hauling water and wood. But she didn't complain. Complaining was for women who had options. Mama, can we go outside today? Ben pressed his face against the frosted window. I want to play in the snow. Not today, sweetheart. Stay inside where it's warm. But we've been inside forever. His voice held the whine of an 8-year-old pushed past patience. I'm going crazy. Benjamin Thomas Whitmore. Clara's voice sharpened. What did I say about complaining? Whitmores don't complain, he muttered. That's right. Now help your brother with the firewood." Sam had been carrying wood up from the shed, trying to earn his keep despite Clara's protests that he was still a child himself. At 14, he'd taken on the weight of responsibility that should have belonged to a grown man. "I can handle it, Mama," he'd said when she told him to rest. "Pa would have wanted me to take care of things." Clara had bitten back her response. Thomas Whitmore hadn't taken care of anything except his bottle and his temper. But Sam remembered a different father, the one from before the drinking got bad, and Clara wouldn't take that from him. The boarding house had 12 permanent residents, all men, all miners or laborers, who needed cheap lodging and hot meals. They'd accepted Clara's presence with varying degrees of warmth. Some were kind, slipping her extra coins when Martha wasn't looking, asking about her children with genuine interest. Others kept their distance uncomfortable with a woman and children disrupting their bachelor establishment. And then there was the talk. Clara heard it in whispered conversations that stopped when she entered a room. Prudence Ashworth had been busy spreading her poison through Willowbrook like a sickness. The widow with 7 children. The woman of loose morals. The vagrant who should be driven out before she corrupted their decent town. "Ignore them," Martha advised during one of their rare quiet moments. "Words can't hurt you if you don't let them." "Words hurt my children." Clara's voice was tight. "Maggie came back crying yesterday because some woman on the street called her mother a name I won't repeat." Martha's expression darkened. "Which woman?" "Does it matter? They all think the same thing." "Not all of them." Martha poured 2 cups of coffee and pushed one toward Clara. "There are good people in this town. They're just scared of Prudence, scared of going against her. Give them time." "Time." Clara laughed bitterly. "Time is a luxury I don't have, Mrs. Finch. Winter's getting worse. Every day the snow piles higher, and I'm one wrong word away from being thrown out into it with 7 children who depend on me." "You're not getting thrown out. Not while I have breath in my body." Clara looked at the older woman, really looked at her. "Why do you care so much? You barely know me." Martha was quiet for a long moment, her hands wrapped around her coffee cup, knuckles white. "I had a daughter once," she finally said. "Long time ago before I came to Montana. She got herself in trouble with a man who promised her everything and gave her nothing. When she came to me pregnant and scared, I turned her away. Told her she'd made her bed and now she had to lie in it." Clara's breath caught. "She died." Martha's voice was flat, emotionless. "Childbirth. Alone in some charity hospital because her own mother was too proud and too righteous to help her. The baby died too. A little girl." "Mrs. Finch, I'm so sorry. I'm not telling you this for sympathy." Martha met her eyes. "I'm telling you because every time I look at you with those 7 children fighting to keep them together, refusing to give up on them no matter how hard things get, I see what my daughter might have been if I'd done right by her. I see a second chance I don't deserve, but I'm taking anyway." Clara reached across the table and covered Martha's weathered hand with her own. "She would have forgiven you. Daughters forgive their mothers. It's what we do." "Maybe." Martha pulled her hand away gruff again. "Anyway, that's why I care. Now get back to work before those biscuits burn." Clara returned to the kitchen with a new understanding of Martha Finch and a deeper gratitude for the refuge she'd been given. But gratitude wouldn't protect her children from Prudence Ashworth's campaign, and she knew it was only a matter of time before things got worse. She was right. It happened 3 days later, on a morning so cold that the water in the wash basin had frozen solid overnight. Clara was serving breakfast when the front door opened, letting in a blast of frigid air and 2 men in official-looking coats. "We're looking for Mrs. Clara Whitmore," the first one said. He was tall, thin, with a face like a hatchet and eyes that held no warmth. Clara's hands stilled on the coffee pot. "I'm Clara Whitmore." "Ma'am, I'm Sheriff Hank Dawson, and this is Judge Patterson. We need to speak with you about your children." The coffee pot slipped from Clara's fingers. Martha caught it before it hit the floor. "What about her children?" Martha demanded. "That's between us and Mrs. Whitmore." The sheriff's voice was cold. "Ma'am, if you'll come with us. I'm not going anywhere until you tell me what this is about." Judge Patterson stepped forward. He was older, rounder, with the self-important bearing of a man used to being obeyed. "Mrs. Whitmore, we've received concerns about the welfare of your children. Serious concerns." "From whom?" The judge's eyes flickered just for a moment. "That's not relevant. What is relevant is that we have the authority to investigate claims of child neglect, and if we find those claims have merit, to remove the children to a more suitable environment." The world tilted. Clara grabbed the back of a chair to steady herself. "Neglect!" Her voice came out as a whisper. "I have never neglected my children. Never." "Then you have nothing to worry about." The sheriff gestured toward the stairs. "We'll need to see the children, inspect their living conditions." "You have no right." "Actually, ma'am, we do." Judge Patterson pulled a folded paper from his coat. "This is a court order signed by me authorizing an inspection of the premises and an evaluation of the children's welfare. If you refuse to comply, we can have you arrested for obstruction." Clara's mind raced. Her children were upstairs, probably still asleep, innocent of the storm about to descend on them. If these men saw the cramped room, the patched clothes, the thin children who'd gone hungry too many times, what would they conclude? "Let me come with you." Her voice shook despite her efforts to steady it. "They'll be frightened if strangers just burst in." The sheriff considered, then nodded. "Fine, but don't try anything foolish." Clara led them upstairs, her legs trembling with each step. She paused outside the door, took a deep breath, and opened it. 7 faces turned toward her. Sam was already up helping Josie braid Ruth's hair. Ben was playing with the wooden soldiers he'd carved from scraps. Maggie sat in the corner reading, and Ellie was entertaining baby Grace with a rag doll. "Mama." Sam's voice was sharp with alarm when he saw the men behind her. "What's going on?" "It's all right, sweetheart." Clara kept her voice calm, even as her heart shattered. "These men just want to make sure you're all healthy and happy. They're going to ask you some questions." "Why?" Maggie's voice was barely audible. She'd pressed herself deeper into the corner, her book forgotten. "Because some people in town are worried about you." Clara knelt in front of her frightened daughter. "But you don't have to be scared. Just tell the truth. Okay? The truth is all we ever tell." Judge Patterson stepped forward, his eyes sweeping the room. Clara watched him take in the cramped space, the pallets on the floor, the single window with frost creeping across the glass. She watched him look at her children, their thin faces, their mended clothes, the wariness in their eyes. Children. His voice was falsely jovial, the tone adults used when they thought children were stupid. "I'm Judge Patterson. I just want to ask you a few questions." Sam positioned himself in front of his siblings. "What kind of questions?" "About your mother, about how she treats you." "Our mother is the best mother in the world." Sam's voice rang with conviction. "She works hard every day to take care of us. She makes sure we're fed and warm and safe. She reads to us at night and teaches us our letters and tells us we're loved even when things are hard." "That's a very nice thing to say." The judge's smile didn't reach his eyes. "But I need to ask the younger ones, too." He moved toward Ruth, and Clara had to physically restrain herself from stepping between them. "Little girl, does your mother ever hit you?" Ruth's eyes went wide with confusion. "Hit me?" "Does she punish you? Hurt you?" "Mama spanked me once when I ran into the street." Ruth's voice was small. "But only because a wagon almost hit me. She was scared." "I see. And do you get enough to eat?" "Yes, sir. Mama always makes sure we eat first, even when there's not a lot." "Even when there's not a lot." The judge made a note in a small book he'd produced from his pocket. "So there are times when there isn't enough food." Clara's blood ran cold. "There are times when money is tight, like it is for most families. But my children have never gone truly hungry. I would starve before I let that happen. Interesting choice of words, Mrs. Whitmore. Mama doesn't eat sometimes. Ben piped up, trying to be helpful. She says she's not hungry, but I think she's lying so we can have more. Ben, Clara's voice was strained. It's true. Sam told me. He said Mama gives us her food because she loves us more than herself. The judge made another note, and Clara wanted to scream. Every loving sacrifice she'd made for her children was being twisted into evidence against her. That's enough. The sheriff's voice cut through the tension. We've seen what we need to see. And what exactly have you seen? Martha Finch stood in the doorway, her arms crossed, and her expression dangerous. 7 children who clearly loved their mother. A family that struggled but stayed together. A woman who's worked her fingers to the bone to provide for her young'uns. We've seen children living in inadequate conditions. Judge Patterson tucked his notebook away. Children who admit to food insecurity. A woman who, by her own admission, has been run out of multiple towns. I was not run out. Clara's voice shook with fury. I left because people like you made it impossible to stay, Mrs. Whitmore. I'm going to recommend that your children be placed in the county orphanage pending a full investigation of your fitness as a mother. The words hit Clara like physical blows. She staggered, and only Sam's quick hand kept her from falling. No. The word tore from her throat. No, you can't. They're my children. Mine. The state has a responsibility to protect children from harm. I have never harmed them. Clara was screaming now, all composure gone. I have given them everything. Everything. My food, my sleep, my health, my sanity. I have walked through fire for these children, and you want to take them because I'm poor, because I don't have a husband, because some bitter woman with too much time and too much money decided I wasn't respectable enough for her precious town. Mama. Sam's arms went around her. Mama, calm down, please. Don't tell me to calm down. She whirled on her son, then stopped seeing the fear in his eyes. The fear in all their eyes. Her children were watching their mother fall apart, and that scared them more than anything the judge had said. Clara forced herself to breathe, forced her hands to unclench, forced her voice to something approaching steadiness. When? She asked. What? When are you taking my children? The judge had the grace to look uncomfortable. We'll need to make arrangements with the orphanage. A few days, perhaps a week. A few days. Clara's laugh was hollow. A few days to say goodbye to the children I've raised, the children I've sacrificed everything for. How generous. Mrs. Whitmore, this isn't personal. Get out. Her voice was quiet now, dangerously quiet. Get out of my room. Get out of this house. Get out before I do something that gives you a real reason to arrest me. The sheriff's hand moved toward his gun, but Martha stepped forward. You heard her. You've done your inspection. Now leave. We'll be back. Judge Patterson straightened his coat. Mrs. Whitmore. I'd advise you not to try running. It'll only make things worse. They left, and Clara stood in the middle of the room, surrounded by her children, feeling something inside her break. Mama! Ruth's voice was trembling. Are they going to take us away? Clara dropped to her knees and pulled all 7 children into her arms, as many as she could reach, a tangle of small bodies and frightened faces. Listen to me. Her voice was fierce. No one is taking you anywhere. No one. Do you hear me? We are a family. We stay together. Whatever happens, we stay together. But the judge said, Josie started. The judge is wrong. Clara pulled back, looking at each of her children in turn. I don't care what he says, what that horrible woman wants, what anyone thinks. You are my children. I am your mother. And I will fight every person in this town before I let them separate us. How? Sam's voice was raw. Mama, how can you fight them? They have the law on their side. Clara didn't have an answer. She didn't know how she would fight a judge's order, a sheriff's authority, the combined weight of a town's judgment against her. But she knew with a certainty that went beyond logic that she would find a way. "I don't know yet," she admitted. "But I'll figure it out. I always figure it out." The children clung to her, and Clara held them, memorizing the feel of each small body, the smell of their hair, the sound of their breathing. If the worst happened, if they were taken despite everything, she wanted to remember this. Every moment. Every heartbeat. Martha found her there an hour later, still on the floor, still holding her children. "Clara." The older woman's voice was gentle. "We need to talk." Clara looked up with red-rimmed eyes. "What's there to talk about? They're going to take my children." "Not if I have anything to say about it." Martha helped her to her feet. "Come downstairs. There's someone I want you to meet." "Who?" "Someone who might be able to help." Martha's expression was determined. "Prudence Ashworth thinks she runs this town, but there are people here who've been waiting for a chance to push back. I think it's time to give them one." Clara followed Martha down the stairs, her children trailing behind her like ducklings. In the boarding house parlor, a man stood by the window, his back to them. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with dark hair that had started to gray at the temples. When he turned, Clara saw a face that had seen hardship weathered by sun and wind and something deeper. But his eyes were what stopped her. Warm brown eyes that held kindness and pain in equal measure. "Mrs. Whitmore." His voice was deep rough. "My name is Jeremiah Dawson. I understand you're in some trouble." "Dawson?" Clara's eyes narrowed. "The sheriff who was just here threatening to take my children is named Dawson." "My brother." Jeremiah's jaw tightened. "We don't see eye to eye on much these days." "Why should I trust you?" "You shouldn't. Not yet, anyway." He moved closer, and Clara noticed he walked with a slight limp. "But Martha tells me you need help, and I'm offering. No strings, no conditions. Just help." "Why would you help me? You don't know me." Jeremiah was quiet for a moment. His eyes moved past her to where her children stood clustered in the doorway. "I had a wife once," he said. "Sarah, and a daughter, Lily. They died 5 years ago in the fever that swept through here. I couldn't save them. Couldn't do anything but watch them slip away." Clara's breath caught. "Since then I've been living like a ghost. Working my ranch, shoeing horses, going through the motions, but not really living." His gaze returned to her face. "When Martha told me about you, about those 7 children, and what Prudence is trying to do, something woke up in me. Something I thought died with Sarah and Lily. I don't need your pity." "Good, because I'm not offering pity." Jeremiah's voice hardened. "I'm offering partnership. I've got a ranch outside of town. Big house too big for one man. I've got standing in this community, respect I've earned over 15 years. I've got influence with people who matter, people who've been waiting for someone to stand up to Prudence Ashworth." "What are you suggesting?" Jeremiah took a deep breath. "I'm suggesting we get married." The world stopped. Clara stared at him, certain she'd misheard. "I'm sorry, what?" "Married." Jeremiah's expression didn't waver. "If you're my wife, the judge can't take your children. A married woman with a respected husband and a proper home isn't neglecting her children. She's just struggling like everyone else. You're asking me to marry you, a complete stranger. I'm asking you to save your children." Jeremiah stepped closer. "I know it sounds crazy. I know we don't know each other. But sometimes crazy is the only option that makes sense." "Mama," Sam's voice came from the doorway. "Mama, maybe you should listen to him." Clara whirled to face her son. "Samuel, this is an adult conversation." "I'm almost an adult, and I know what's at stake." Sam's eyes were too old, too serious for 14. "If marrying this man keeps us together, keeps us safe, isn't that worth considering? Marriage isn't a business transaction." "It can be." Martha's voice was practical. It has been for most of history. People married for land, for money, for protection. Love came later if it came at all. What Jeremiah's offering isn't romance, it's survival. Clara looked at Jeremiah Dawson, this stranger who was offering her everything she needed and nothing she'd asked for. She looked at Martha, who'd taken her in when no one else would. She looked at her children's 7 faces watching her with hope and fear. "I need to think," she said finally. "This is too big a decision to make in a moment." "Of course," Jeremiah nodded. "Take whatever time you need, but Clara—" He paused, and something shifted in his expression. "I know what it's like to lose everything. I wouldn't wish that on anyone. Whatever you decide, I want you to know that I meant what I said. No strings, no conditions. Just one person helping another because it's the right thing to do." He left, and Clara sank into a chair, her mind reeling. Marriage. To a stranger. To save her children. Was she really considering this Mama? Josie knelt beside her. "That man seemed kind." "Kind strangers can turn cruel, Josie. I've learned that lesson." "But not all of them." Josie's hand found hers. "Some strangers stay kind. Some strangers become family." Clara looked at her 12-year-old daughter, so wise beyond her years, and wondered when the child had become the teacher. "How did you get so smart?" she murmured. "I learned from watching you." Josie squeezed her hand. "You taught us that family is built by choice, not just by blood. Maybe this is your chance to choose again." Clara pulled her daughter close, breathing in the scent of her hair, and thought about choices and chances, and the terrifying possibility that hope might not always lead to heartbreak. Outside, the snow continued to fall, and somewhere in Willowbrook, a lonely man rode back to his empty ranch, wondering if the desperate offer he'd made would be accepted or refused. And in the boarding house, a mother with 7 children sat surrounded by everything she loved, knowing that the next decision she made would determine whether she kept them or lost them forever. Clara didn't sleep that night. She lay in the darkness, listening to the breathing of her children, and turned Jeremiah Dawson's offer over in her mind like a stone she couldn't put down. Marriage. To a stranger. To save her children. Every instinct screamed at her to refuse. She'd trusted a man, once trusted Thomas Whitmore with her heart and her future, and look where that had gotten her. 14 years of marriage, 7 children, and a lifetime of bruises, both visible and hidden. But Thomas had been charming at the start. Sweet. Full of promises, he'd seemed to believe himself. Jeremiah Dawson was offering no such illusions, no romance, no false declarations of love, just a practical arrangement between 2 people who needed something from each other. Somehow that honesty made it easier to consider. "Mama." Sam's voice came from the darkness. "You awake?" "Yes, sweetheart. Go back to sleep." "Can't." She heard him shifting on his pallet. "Keep thinking about that man, about what he offered. You shouldn't worry about adult things." "Hard not to when adult things might take away my family." Clara's heart clenched. Sam had grown up too fast, forced into responsibility by a father who'd abandoned his duties long before he'd abandoned his life. At 14, he carried burdens that would have broken men twice his age. "What do you think?" she asked quietly. "About Mr. Dawson's offer?" "I think he seemed honest, seemed like a man who meant what he said." "Your father seemed honest too at first." "Pa was different." Sam's voice hardened in the darkness. "Pa smiled too much, talked too much, made promises like they were going out of style. This man, he barely smiled at all, barely said more than he needed to. Men like that, they don't make promises unless they mean to keep them." Clara marveled at her son's perception. At 14, he'd learned to read people in ways that had taken her decades to understand. "When did you get so wise?" "Watched Pa break every promise he ever made. Teaches you to spot the difference between real and fake." They lay in silence for a moment, the only sound the wind howling outside and baby Grace's soft snoring. "I'm scared, Sam." Clara whispered it like a confession. "I'm scared of making the wrong choice. Scared of trusting another man. Scared of what happens if I say yes, and scared of what happens if I say no. What does your gut say? My gut says run, but my gut also said to trust your father, and look how that turned out. Maybe your gut's learned something since then. Sam's voice was gentle. Maybe it knows the difference now. Clara closed her eyes, feeling tears leak from the corners. Her 14-year-old son was counseling her on marriage. The world had turned upside down somewhere along the way, and she'd been too busy surviving to notice. Morning came cold and gray, and Clara rose before dawn as always. But instead of going straight to the kitchen, she bundled herself in her worn shawl and slipped out the back door of the boarding house. She needed to walk, needed to clear her head, needed to make a decision before the judge came back and took it out of her hands. The snow crunched under her boots as she made her way down Main Street. Willowbrook was quiet at this hour, most decent folks still in their beds. A few lights burned in windows, early risers preparing for the day, but no one was out in the bitter cold. No one except Clara. She walked without destination, letting her feet carry her where they would. Past the general store, where Mr. Chen had slipped Ellie a piece of candy yesterday. Past the church, where Prudence Ashworth held court every Sunday. Past the bank where her husband made decisions that affected everyone's lives. And then, without quite meaning to, she found herself at the edge of town, looking out at the snow-covered prairie that stretched toward the mountains. Somewhere out there was Jeremiah Dawson's ranch, his empty house, his offer of salvation that might be a trap or might be a miracle. Little early for a walk, isn't it? Clara spun, her heart leaping into her throat. Jeremiah stood behind her, leading a horse loaded with supplies. He looked as startled to see her as she was to see him. "I couldn't sleep," she said. "Makes two of us." He stopped beside her, his breath fogging in the cold air. "Been up since 4, couldn't stand the quiet anymore. Figured I'd come into town, pick up some things I need." "Do you always shop before dawn?" "Only when I've got too much on my mind to stay home." His eyes met hers, and Clara saw the same sleeplessness there that she felt in her own bones. "I'm guessing you've been thinking about my offer." "I've been thinking about nothing else." Jeremiah nodded slowly. And I don't know." Clara hugged herself against the cold. "I don't know you. I don't know if I can trust you. I don't know if marrying a stranger is better or worse than losing my children. Those are fair concerns. They're more than concerns. They're the only thing standing between me and saying yes." Jeremiah was quiet for a long moment. Then he tied his horse to a nearby post and turned to face her fully. "Ask me anything," he said. "Whatever you need to know, whatever will help you decide. I'll answer honest." Clara studied him. The early morning light was kind to his weathered face, softening the hard lines around his eyes and mouth. He looked tired, she realized. Bone-deep tired, the kind that came from carrying grief for too long. "Why did you really offer to marry me?" she asked. "And don't give me that speech about wanting to help. There's more to it than that." Jeremiah's jaw tightened, and for a moment she thought he wouldn't answer. Then he let out a long breath. "My wife Sarah, she was like you in some ways. Strong, stubborn, would have walked through fire for the people she loved. When she died, when Lily died, I thought I'd die too. Wished for it some nights, but I didn't. I just kept waking up in that empty house, kept going through the motions, kept pretending I was still alive when most of me was buried alongside them." Clara's heart ached at the pain in his voice. "Then Martha told me about you, about those 7 children and what you've done to keep them together. About Prudence Ashworth trying to destroy you just because she could." His voice hardened. "And something woke up in me. Something I thought was dead. I don't know what to call it, maybe just the will to do something that matters. But I knew I couldn't stand by and watch another family get torn apart. Not when I had the power to stop it. So I'm a charity case." "No." Jeremiah's voice was sharp. "You're a woman who's earned my respect without even trying. You're a mother who'd sacrifice everything for her children. You're the bravest person I've met since Sarah, and I'm including myself in that count." Clara felt tears prick at her eyes and blinked them back furiously. "You don't know me well enough to say that." "I know enough. I know you came to this town with nothing but the clothes on your back and 7 children depending on you. I know you faced down Prudence Ashworth when grown men crossed the street to avoid her. I know you've been run out of 3 towns and you're still standing still, fighting, still refusing to give up." He stepped closer. "That's not charity, Clara. That's recognition of worth." No one had ever spoken to her like that. Not Thomas, who'd started out sweet and ended up cruel. Not the townspeople who'd judged her. Not even Martha, who'd been kind but practical. No one had ever looked at her struggle and called it brave. "What would you expect from me?" she asked. "If I said yes. What would marriage to you look like?" Jeremiah considered the question carefully. "I'd expect you to run the household. Cook, clean, tend to the children same as you're doing now, but in a proper home with proper resources. I'd expect you to be faithful, and I'd be faithful in return. I'd expect honesty between us, even when it's hard." And the other parts of marriage. Heat crept into Clara's cheeks, but she forced herself to hold his gaze. This was too important to let embarrassment get in the way. "I wouldn't expect that." Jeremiah's voice was steady. "Not unless and until you wanted it. I'm not looking for a wife in that sense. I'm looking for a partner, someone to share the work and the life. If something more develops over time, that'd be up to you." "You're saying you'd marry me and not expect me to share your bed." "I'm saying I've lived without that for 5 years. I can keep living without it." His eyes held hers. "What I can't live with is watching innocent children get taken from their mother because this town's too cruel to let them be." Clara felt something shift inside her. Some wall she'd built start to crack. "I need to think," she said. "I need more time." "Take what you need. But Clara, the judge won't wait forever. Whatever you decide, decide soon." He untied his horse and started to walk away. Then he stopped, turning back. "One more thing. You asked why I really offered. There's a part I didn't mention." He hesitated. "That empty house I mentioned. It's not just empty of people. It's empty of life, of laughter, of the sounds of children playing and meals being shared and all the little things that make a house a home. I told myself I was offering to help you, but the truth is you'd be helping me too. Giving me a reason to come home at night. Giving me a family again, even if it's not the one I lost." He walked away before Clara could respond, leading his horse into the slowly waking town. She stood there for a long time, watching him go, feeling the cold seep through her shawl, and wondering if she was brave enough to take the chance he was offering. When she finally returned to the boarding house, Martha was waiting with coffee and concern. "Where have you been?" "I was worried sick." "Walking. Thinking." Clara wrapped her hands around the warm cup. "I saw him. Jeremiah. We talked. And I still don't know what to do." Martha sat down across from her, her weathered face serious. "Let me tell you something about Jeremiah Dawson. I've known him 15 years, since before he married Sarah, since before Lily was born. He's the most decent man in this territory. Works hard, keeps his word, never cheated anyone out of a dime. When Sarah died, half the widows in the county tried to catch his eye. He never gave any of them a second look." "Why not?" "Because he was still grieving. Still is, I reckon. But the fact that he came to me about you, that he made this offer, that tells me something's changed in him." Martha leaned forward. "He's not doing this just to help you, Clara. He's doing it because somewhere in that broken heart of his, he's ready to live again. And maybe, just maybe, you're the one who can help him do that. I'm not looking to fix a broken man. I've got enough broken pieces of my own. I'm not saying fix him. I'm saying maybe 2 broken people can help each other heal." Martha's voice softened. "Or maybe they can't. Maybe this whole thing falls apart, and you end up worse than before. But at least you'd have tried. At least your children would have a chance." Clara thought about Maggie, who cried every time they approached a new town. About Ben, who'd learned at 8 that hunger was a familiar companion. About Sam carrying burdens no child should carry. About Ruth and Ellie and baby Grace too young to understand why the world was so cruel to them. She thought about the orphanage, about her children being separated, scattered to different families, growing up alone, and wondering why their mother had let them go. "I can't lose them," she whispered. "I can't." "Then don't." Martha's voice was fierce. "Fight for them, whatever it takes." Clara looked up, and something in her expression must have changed because Martha nodded slowly. "You've decided." "I've decided I need to talk to Jeremiah again. Properly this time. Ask him every question I can think of, look him in the eye while he answers, and make sure I'm not making the biggest mistake of my life." That sounds like wisdom to me. Clara finished her coffee and stood. "Can you watch the children? I might be gone a while." "Take all the time you need. Those young'uns aren't going anywhere." Clara bundled up again and headed out, this time with a destination in mind. She asked at the general store for directions to the Dawson Ranch and set out on foot, the snow crunching under her boots with every step. It was a long walk, over an hour in the cold, but Clara needed the time, needed the space to organize her thoughts, to prepare her questions, to steel herself for whatever came next. The ranch came into view, gradually emerging from the snowy landscape like a dream. A large house with a wraparound porch, a sturdy barn, corrals and outbuildings scattered across the property. It was bigger than she'd expected, more prosperous. A real home. Could it be her home? Her children's home? Jeremiah emerged from the barn as she approached, surprise flickering across his face. "Clara." He said her name like he wasn't sure she was real. "You walked all the way out here." "I needed to see it. The place where you're asking me to live." He nodded slowly. "Fair enough. Want to come inside? It's cold." She followed him up the porch steps and through the front door. The house was clean but sparse, the furniture functional but worn. It had the feel of a place that had been loved once, but had been merely occupied since. "It's big," Clara said. "Too big for one man." Jeremiah hung his coat on a hook by the door. "Sarah and we planned to fill it with children. Never got the chance." "I'm sorry." "Don't be. It was a long time ago." He gestured toward the kitchen. "Coffee? Please." She watched him move around the kitchen with surprising grace for such a large man. He made coffee the same way he did everything else, efficiently, without wasted motion. A man who'd learned to take care of himself because there was no one else to do it. "Ask your questions," he said, setting a cup in front of her. "I can see them building up behind your eyes." Clara took a breath. "If we do this, if we get married, what happens when you change your mind? When you decide 7 children are too much trouble, too much noise, too much expense?" "I won't change my mind." "You can't know that." "I can." Jeremiah sat across from her. "Because I've spent 5 years wanting exactly what you'd bring into this house. Life. Noise. Chaos. Someone to cook for, someone to work for, someone to come home to. I'm not going to change my mind about wanting that." "And if you do, what protections do I have?" "I'll put the house in your name." The words came out without hesitation. "Half the property legally yours. If I ever try to throw you out, you'll have the law on your side." Clara stared at him. "You'd do that? Give up half of everything you've built?" "I'd do more than that if it meant you'd trust me." His eyes held hers. "Clara, I know you've been hurt. I can see it in the way you hold yourself, the way you flinch when men get too close, the way you look for exits every time you enter a room. Someone taught you that men can't be trusted. I'm not asking you to forget those lessons. I'm asking you to give me a chance to prove they don't apply to everyone." Clara felt tears threatening again. "My husband hit me. Not at first, but later. After the drinking got bad. He'd come home angry, and I'd be the one he took it out on. I've never raised a hand to a woman in my life." Jeremiah's voice was hard. "Never will. A man who hits someone weaker than him isn't a man at all. He wasn't always like that. He was sweet when we married. I thought I knew him. You thought you knew who he was pretending to be. Jeremiah leaned forward. I'm not pretending, Clara. What you see is what you get. A lonely man with an empty house and a heart full of grief who's looking for something to believe in again. That's all I am. That's all I'm offering. Clara looked at him, this stranger, who was offering her everything she needed. She looked around the kitchen, imagining her children sitting at this table eating meals she'd cooked on that stove, running through these rooms with laughter that had been absent for too long. She thought about the alternative, the orphanage, the separation, the end of everything she'd fought so hard to protect. Yes, she said. Jeremiah's breath caught. Yes. Yes, I'll marry you. Clara's voice shook, but her resolve didn't waver. I'll marry you, Jeremiah Dawson. For my children, for this chance at a real life, for whatever future we can build together. Yes. Jeremiah reached across the table and took her hand. His grip was warm, steady, gentle. Nothing like Thomas's grip, which had started gentle and ended bruising. I'll take care of you, he said quietly. You and those 7 children. I'll spend the rest of my life making sure you never regret this decision. Don't make promises you can't keep. I don't. His eyes held hers. That's one thing you'll learn about me. I don't make promises I can't keep. Clara squeezed his hand once, then let go. We should do it soon, before the judge comes back. Tomorrow, if you're willing. Reverend Crawford will perform the ceremony. He's no friend of Prudence Ashworth. Tomorrow. Clara's laugh was shaky. I'm going to marry a stranger tomorrow. Today I'm a stranger. Tomorrow I'll be your husband. Give it time, and maybe someday I'll be something more. Jeremiah stood. Let me take you back to town. It's too cold to walk. The ride back was quiet. Both of them lost in thought. Clara watched the snow-covered landscape pass and wondered what her children would say, how they would react, whether she was saving them or dooming them. Only time would tell. But one thing she knew for certain, she was done running, done hiding, done letting other people's cruelty dictate her choices. Tomorrow, she would marry Jeremiah Dawson. Tomorrow, she would start fighting back. The children took the news better than Clara expected. You're getting married. Josie's eyes went wide. To the man who came yesterday. Yes, sweetheart. Tomorrow. Tomorrow. Sam stepped forward, his expression unreadable. That's fast, Mama. It has to be fast. Clara gathered her children around her in their small room at the boarding house. The judge is coming back in a few days. If I'm married to Mr. Dawson before then, they can't take you away. A married woman with a proper home isn't neglecting her children. So you're marrying him to save us. Maggie's voice was small, uncertain. I'm marrying him because it's the right thing to do. For all of us. Clara knelt down, bringing herself to eye level with her middle children. Mr. Dawson is a good man. He has a big ranch with a big house. There's room for all of us, real beds, warm fires, food on the table. It won't be like before. It won't be like your father. How do you know? Ben asked. Pa was nice at first, too. The question cut deep, but Clara didn't flinch from it. Her children deserved honesty. I don't know for certain, she admitted. But I've talked to him, looked him in the eye, asked him hard questions. And everything in me says he's telling the truth. Sometimes you have to take a chance on people, Ben. Sometimes that's the only way forward. I trust him. Sam's voice was quiet, but firm. I watched him yesterday. The way he talked, the way he moved. He wasn't putting on a show like Pa used to. He was just being himself. Clara looked at her eldest son with gratitude. His support meant everything. What about us? Ellie tugged at Clara's sleeve. Will he be our new papa? Only if you want him to be. He won't force anything on you. He just wants to give us a home. Ruth, who had been silent until now, spoke up in her small voice. "Will he be nice to baby Grace?" Clara pulled her 4-year-old close. "He'll be nice to all of you. I promise." "Then I say yes." Ruth nodded solemnly. "We should marry him." Despite everything, Clara laughed. "We don't all marry him, sweetheart. Just Mama." "But we'll be a family." "Yes, baby. We'll be a family." The rest of the evening passed in a blur of preparations. Martha Finch took charge like a general, commanding troops, pulling a dress from storage that had belonged to a boarder who'd left without paying, altering it to fit Clara's thin frame. It wasn't fancy, just simple blue cotton, but it was clean and whole, without patches or mended seams. "You look almost respectable," Martha said gruffly, stepping back to examine her work. "Almost? Well, you're still too skinny, and there are circles under your eyes big enough to park a wagon in, but respectable enough to get married." Clara looked at herself in the small mirror. The woman staring back was a stranger, someone who'd been through fire and come out scarred, but still standing. She hardly recognized herself. "Thank you, Martha, for everything." "Save your thanks for after the wedding. We've still got to get through tomorrow." Morning came too quickly, and not quickly enough. Clara woke before dawn, her stomach churning with nerves. Today she would marry a man she'd known for less than a week. Today she would bind her life to trust him, with everything she had. Today she would either save her children or make the worst mistake of her life. "Mama." Sam appeared at her side. "It's time." The walk to the church felt like walking to an execution and a salvation all at once. Clara held baby Grace on one hip and Ruth's hand in her other. Her remaining children clustered around her, a protective formation they'd perfected through months of facing hostile towns. Willowbrook was awake and watching. Clara felt eyes on her from every window, every doorway. Word had spread, as word always did in small towns. The widow, with 7 children, was marrying Jeremiah Dawson. The scandal of it, the audacity, would fuel gossip for months. Let them talk. Clara was done caring what people thought. The church was small white, with a steeple that reached toward the gray winter sky. Reverend Crawford waited at the door, a kind-faced man with gentle eyes. "Mrs. Whitmore." He took her hand. "I'm honored to perform this ceremony." "Thank you for agreeing. I know it's unusual." "Love is always unusual," he smiled. "Or in this case, courage. Either way, God blesses both." Inside the church was nearly empty. Martha sat in the front pew, and beside her, to Clara's surprise, sat Mr. Chen from the general store and his wife. Doc Monroe, the town physician, occupied another pew. A handful of others people Clara didn't recognize filled in the remaining seats. And at the altar stood Jeremiah Dawson. He was dressed in his Sunday best, a dark suit that had clearly been stored away for years. His hair was combed, his face freshly shaved. He looked nervous, Clara realized. As nervous as she felt. Somehow that made everything better. She walked down the aisle, her children following behind her. Jeremiah's eyes never left her face, and in them she saw something that looked almost like wonder. "You came," he said quietly when she reached him. "Did you think I wouldn't?" "I thought you might change your mind, wake up and realize what you were agreeing to." "I know exactly what I'm agreeing to." Clara faced him squarely. "A chance. For me and my children. That's worth any risk." Reverend Crawford cleared his throat. "Shall we begin?" The ceremony was simple. No music, no flowers, no elaborate decorations. Just words spoken in a quiet church, while snow fell outside, and a handful of witnesses looked on. "Do you, Jeremiah Daniel Dawson, take this woman to be your lawfully wedded wife, to have and to hold from this day forward, for better or for worse, for richer or for poorer, in sickness and in health, to love and to cherish, until death do you part?" "I do." Jeremiah's voice was steady, sure. And do you, Clara May Whitmore, take this man to be your lawfully wedded husband, to have and to hold from this day forward, for better or for worse, for richer or for poorer, in sickness and in health, to love and to cherish, until death do you part? Clara looked at Jeremiah, this stranger who was becoming her husband. She looked at her children lined up in the front pew, watching with hope and fear. She looked at Martha, who nodded encouragingly, and at the other witnesses who had dared to support her, despite Prudence Ashworth's disapproval. I do. Then by the power vested in me by the territory of Montana, I pronounce you husband and wife. Reverend Crawford smiled. Mr. Dawson, you may kiss your bride. Jeremiah leaned forward, his lips barely brushing Clara's, in the lightest of touches. It was a promise rather than a passion, a beginning rather than a consummation. Hello, wife, he murmured. Hello, husband. Behind them, Ruth started clapping. The other children joined in, and then Martha, and then everyone in the church. The sound echoed off the wooden walls, filling the space with something that felt almost like joy. Time to take your family home, Jeremiah said. They walked out of the church together, Clara's hand on Jeremiah's arm, her children streaming behind them. The wagon was already loaded with their few possessions, Martha having arranged everything while Clara was getting ready. Write to me, Martha said, pulling Clara into a fierce hug. Let me know how you're settling in. I will. Thank you, Martha, for everything. Just be happy, girl. That's all the thanks I need. The ride to the ranch was quiet. The children were subdued, overwhelmed by everything that had happened. Even Ben, usually irrepressible, sat in silence, his eyes fixed on the passing landscape. Clara understood. She felt the same way, overwhelmed, uncertain, hoping she'd made the right choice, but terrified she hadn't. When the ranch came into view, Ellie gasped, "It's so big! Is this really ours?" Ben pressed against the side of the wagon, his eyes wide. It's really ours. Jeremiah's voice was warm. Every acre, every building. You're home now. The word home hung in the air like a blessing. Clara felt tears prick at her eyes and blinked them back furiously. She wouldn't cry. Not now. Not when her children needed to see her strong. Jeremiah helped her down from the wagon, then turned to lift the younger children one by one. Ruth and Ellie immediately started exploring, running toward the barn with Ben close behind. Maggie hung back her hand, finding Clara's, while Josie carried baby Grace and Sam stood at attention like a soldier awaiting orders. Come inside, Jeremiah said. Let me show you around. The house was bigger than Clara remembered. A large main room with a fireplace, a kitchen with a real stove and a pump for water, a dining room with a table big enough for all of them, and bedrooms, 4 of them, more than enough for everyone. The girls can share this room. Jeremiah opened a door to reveal a space with 2 beds and a window overlooking the property. The boys can have the one next to it, and this. He paused at another door. This is the master bedroom. Yours. Ours, Clara corrected automatically, then flushed when she realized what she'd said. Yours for now. Jeremiah's voice was gentle. I'll take the smaller room at the end of the hall, until you're ready for something different, if you ever are. Clara nodded, grateful beyond words for his understanding. Thank you. No thanks needed. This is your home now. You're not a guest here. The children spent the afternoon exploring every inch of the property. Jeremiah showed them the barn, the horses, the chickens in their coop. He explained which chores would be whose, tailored to each child's age and ability, making them feel important and necessary rather than burdensome. You really need our help? Ben asked skeptically. Or are you just being nice? I really need your help. Jeremiah crouched down to the boy's level. Running a ranch is hard work. More than one man can handle alone. I've been doing it by myself for 5 years, and I'll tell you a secret, I'm tired. Having you and your brothers and sisters here, that's not charity. That's salvation. Ben puffed up with pride, and Clara watched her son transform before her eyes. In Thomas's house, Ben had been a nuisance, too loud, too active, always in the way. Here, Jeremiah was making him feel valued. That night, Clara cooked dinner in her new kitchen. Real food, plenty of it, more than her children had seen in months. She watched them eat, watched them laugh, watched the tension slowly drain from their small shoulders. "Mama," Ruth tugged at her sleeve. "I like it here." "So do I, baby." "Can we stay forever?" Clara looked at Jeremiah, who was helping Ben cut his meat, at Sam, who was actually smiling, at Josie and Maggie whispering together like normal sisters instead of refugees constantly on the run. "Yes," she said. "We can stay forever." The peace lasted exactly 3 days. Clara was in the kitchen kneading bread when she heard horses approaching. She wiped her hands on her apron and went to the window, her stomach dropping when she saw who was riding up the lane. Sheriff Hank Dawson, Judge Patterson, and behind them, in a fine carriage, Prudence Ashworth. "Jeremiah!" Clara's voice came out sharper than she intended. He emerged from the barn, his face hardening when he saw the approaching party. "Get the children inside. Keep them there." "What are you going to do?" "Whatever I have to." Clara gathered her children, herding them into the house with instructions to stay quiet and stay put. Then she positioned herself on the porch beside Jeremiah, refusing to hide. "Brother?" Hank Dawson dismounted, his face cold. "Heard you got married? News travels fast." "It does when the news is this ridiculous." Judge Patterson climbed down from his horse. "Marrying a woman under investigation for child neglect? That's obstruction, Jeremiah. That's my business, not yours. It's everyone's business." Prudence Ashworth descended from her carriage like a queen gracing peasants with her presence. "That woman has no right to those children. She's proven herself unfit through years of vagrancy and irresponsible behavior. A hasty marriage doesn't change what she is." "And what exactly is she?" Jeremiah's voice was dangerous. "A mother who sacrificed everything for her children. A woman who walked through blizzards to keep her family together. A person brave enough to face down cruelty with nothing but her own strength. A fallen woman who spreads her legs for any man who'll take her in." The words hung in the air, ugly and deliberate. Clara felt them like a slap, but she didn't flinch. She'd heard worse, survived worse. "Apologize." Jeremiah's voice was soft, terrifying in its softness. "Apologize to my wife right now." "Your wife?" Prudence laughed. "This farce of a marriage, everyone knows why you did it. Everyone knows it's just a ploy to keep those children from the orphanage where they belong. Those children belong with their mother, and their mother is my wife, which makes them my children, which means anyone who threatens them is threatening me." Sheriff Dawson stepped forward. "Jem, don't make this harder than it has to be. The judge has a court order." "A court order based on lies." Jeremiah didn't move. "Based on malicious gossip from a woman with too much power and too little heart." "How dare you?" Prudence's face flushed with rage. "I dare because it's true." Jeremiah's eyes locked onto hers. "I know why you hate her, Prudence. I know what happened 40 years ago. The daughter you gave away. The shame you buried so deep you can't stand to see it in anyone else." The color drained from Prudence's face. "You know nothing." "I know Sarah told me before she died. She was friends with the woman who delivered your baby, the baby you gave to strangers because your family couldn't bear the scandal." Jeremiah's voice was relentless. "You've spent your whole life punishing other women for the sin you committed yourself, and I'm done watching it happen." "You wouldn't dare tell people." "I don't want to. I've kept this secret for 5 years because Sarah asked me to. But if you push this, if you try to take my wife's children, I'll tell everyone. Every single person in this town will know what you did. What you've been hiding all these years while you sat in judgment of others." Silence fell over the group. Clara watched Prudence's face cycle through emotions, rage, fear, calculation, and finally something that looked almost like defeat. "This isn't over," Prudence said, but her voice had lost its power. "Yes, it is." Jeremiah stepped forward. "You're going to leave. You're going to drop this investigation. You're going to tell everyone that Mrs. Dawson is a fine, upstanding woman who deserves respect. And if I ever hear you've said one word against her or her children, I'll make sure your secret becomes the only thing anyone in Montana talks about." Prudence's mouth opened and closed. Then she turned, climbed back into her carriage, and drove away without another word. Judge Patterson looked uncertain. "Jeremiah, there are legal proceedings. Drop them." "I can't just—" "You can and you will." Jeremiah's voice brooked no argument. "Unless you want me to start asking questions about how you got that court order in the first place. How much did Prudence pay you, Patterson? Or did she just threaten to expose whatever dirty secret she holds over your head?" The judge's face went red. "I'll see what I can do." "You'll do more than see. You'll make this go away. Today." Patterson mounted his horse and rode off without another word. Only Sheriff Dawson remained. "That was quite a show, little brother." His voice was grudging, but not hostile. "I meant every word. I know you did. That's what worries me." Hank looked at Clara, for the first time really looked at her. "Ma'am, I apologize for my part in this. I was following orders I shouldn't have followed." Clara nodded stiffly. "Thank you. Jem, take care of yourself. And your new family." Hank mounted up. "Prudence won't forget this. She'll find another way to come at you." "Let her try." The sheriff rode away, and Clara sagged against the porch railing, her legs suddenly weak. "Is it over?" she whispered. "The legal part, probably." Jeremiah turned to face her. "Prudence will hold a grudge forever, but she won't risk her secret getting out. She'll leave you alone." "How did you know about her daughter?" "Sarah was a midwife before we married. She heard things kept confidences, but she told me about Prudence because she said someday that woman would go too far and someone would need to stop her." Jeremiah's voice softened. "Guess today was that day." Clara looked at this man, her husband of 3 days, who had just faced down the most powerful woman in the territory to protect her and her children. "Thank you," she said, her voice cracking. "Thank you for fighting for us. You're my family now." Jeremiah reached out, hesitated, then gently took her hand. "Fighting for you isn't a favor. It's just what you do for the people who belong to you." The door burst open, and 7 children spilled onto the porch, their faces a mixture of fear and hope. "Mama!" Sam's voice was urgent. "What happened? Are they taking us?" "No, baby." Clara opened her arms and her children rushed into them. "No one's taking anyone. We're staying right here, all of us, together." Over her children's heads, Clara met Jeremiah's eyes. And for the first time since Thomas Whitmore had broken her trust all those years ago, she felt something she'd thought she'd lost forever. Hope. Real hope. Not the desperate kind that kept you moving, but the settled kind that let you stay. The kind that believed tomorrow might actually be better than today. She didn't know if she would ever love Jeremiah Dawson the way a wife was supposed to love a husband. She didn't know if they would ever be more than 2 damaged people helping each other survive. But standing on that porch, surrounded by her children, protected by a man who had proven himself worthy of trust, Clara knew one thing for certain. She was finally home. Winter settled over the ranch like a blanket, heavy and relentless. The snow piled higher each week, trapping them in a world of white silence. But Clara had never felt more at peace. 3 months had passed since the confrontation with Prudence Ashworth. 3 months of cooking meals in her own kitchen, tucking her children into real beds, watching them grow stronger and happier with each passing day. 3 months of learning to live alongside Jeremiah Dawson, this quiet man who asked for nothing and gave everything. "Mama, watch." Ben came barreling through the snow, a makeshift sled fashioned from old boards behind him. He launched himself down the small hill near the barn, whooping with joy as he picked up speed. "Be careful," Clara called, but she was smiling. "He's fine." Jeremiah appeared beside her, 2 steaming cups in his hands. "Boy's got more energy than a spring colt. Good to see him using it for something other than trouble." Clara accepted the coffee gratefully. "He's different here. They all are." "Different how?" "Lighter. Like they've finally set down a burden they've been carrying too long." Jeremiah nodded slowly. "Children shouldn't have burdens. World puts enough weight on them when they grow up. Let them be light while they can." They stood together in comfortable silence, watching Ben crash spectacularly at the bottom of the hill, only to jump up laughing and drag his sled back for another run. Ruth and Ellie were building something that might have been a snowman, or might have been a fortress, their high voices carrying on the cold air. Sam was helping Josie carry firewood, the 2 oldest working in easy tandem. Only Maggie stayed inside as she often did. The 10-year-old had thawed slowly, more slowly than her siblings. The scars from her father's house ran deeper in her, and she still flinched when Jeremiah moved too quickly, still went silent when his voice rose even slightly. "Give her time," Clara had said when Jeremiah noticed. "All the time she needs," he'd replied. "I'm not going anywhere." Now, watching him watch her children with such patience and care, Clara felt something shift in her chest. Something that had been frozen for years beginning to thaw. "Jeremiah." Thank you." He turned to look at her, eyebrows raised. "For what?" "For this. All of this. For giving us a home, for protecting us, for being patient with children who aren't yours, for—" She trailed off, overwhelmed by everything she wanted to say, and couldn't find words for. "They are mine." Jeremiah's voice was quiet but firm. "Maybe not by blood, but by choice. That's stronger anyway." "Is it?" "My pa used to say that blood makes you related, but loyalty makes you family. I didn't understand it when I was young, but I do now." He turned to face her fully. "Those 7 children in there, they're my family. You're my family. Not because of some words spoken in a church, but because I chose you. All of you." Clara's eyes burned with tears she refused to shed. "I don't know what we did to deserve you." "You survived." Jeremiah's voice was rough. "You kept going when most people would have given up. You held your family together through things that would have broken anyone else. That's what you did, Clara. That's who you are." Before she could respond, a shriek from inside the house shattered the moment. "Mama, Mama, come quick." Clara's heart seized. She was running before she knew she'd moved Jeremiah right behind her. Through the door, across the main room, into the girls' bedroom, where Josie stood over baby Grace's small form. "She's burning up." Josie's voice was panicked. "I went to check on her and she's so hot, Mama, she's so hot." Clara pushed past her daughter and gathered Grace into her arms. The baby's skin was fire beneath her hands, her small body limp and unresponsive. "Grace, Grace baby, wake up." The child's eyes fluttered but didn't open. Her breathing was shallow, rapid, wrong. "I'll get Doc Monroe." Jeremiah was already moving. "Keep her cool. Wet cloths on her forehead, her neck, her wrists. Jeremiah, the snow, the roads." "I don't care if I have to dig through 10 feet of it. I'm bringing back that doctor." He was gone before Clara could argue. She heard the barn door slam, heard hoofbeats pounding away through the snow, and then silence broken only by Grace's labored breathing. "Josie, get me water. Sam, keep the other children calm. Maggie, I need clean cloths, as many as you can find." Her children scattered to obey, and Clara was left alone with her youngest, her baby, the child born 3 months after Thomas died. The child who represented hope and new beginnings. The child she couldn't lose. "Stay with me, Grace." Clara pressed cool cloths to the burning skin. "Stay with Mama. Don't you dare leave me." The hours that followed were the longest of Clara's life. Doc Monroe arrived snow-covered and grim-faced, with Jeremiah close behind. He examined Grace with practiced hands, while Clara hovered her heart in her throat. "Fever's high," he said finally. "Could be influenza, could be something else. Hard to say with babies this young. Will she live?" The question hung in the air like a prayer. Doc Monroe met her eyes with the honesty she'd come to expect from people in this territory. "I don't know. We'll do everything we can. Keep her cool, try to get fluids into her prey. That's all we can do." Clara had never been much for praying. God hadn't seemed particularly interested in her problems over the years. But that night, kneeling beside her daughter's bed, she prayed like she'd never prayed before. "Please." The word was torn from somewhere deep inside her. "Please don't take her. I've lost so much. I can't lose her too." A hand settled on her shoulder. Jeremiah, his face drawn with worry. "I'll stay with her. You need to rest." "I can't leave her." "Then don't leave. But let me help you." He pulled a chair close to the bed. "Sit down before you fall down. I'll keep watch." Clara sank into the chair, her legs giving out beneath her. Jeremiah settled on the floor beside her, his back against the wall, his eyes on Grace's small form. "Tell me about her," he said quietly. "About when she was born." Clara knew what he was doing, trying to distract her to keep her from spiraling into panic. But she was grateful for it. "She was born in a charity hospital in Copper Falls. I was alone, no money for a proper doctor. The midwife who delivered her said she was the smallest baby she'd ever seen, who survived the first night. But she did survive. She did. Came out fighting, screaming at the world like she was already angry at it." Clara managed a weak smile. "Thomas had been dead 3 months. His family had thrown us out. I had nothing, no money, no home, no hope. And then Grace was there, and suddenly I had a reason to keep going. She's a fighter. She'll fight this too." "You don't know that." "No, I don't." Jeremiah's voice was honest. "But I know her mother is a fighter. I know she comes from strong stock, and I know that God or fate or whatever you want to call it didn't bring her this far just to take her now." Clara reached down and found his hand in the darkness. His fingers closed around hers, warm and steady. "Thank you for staying. Nowhere else I'd rather be." They kept vigil through the night, taking turns pressing cool cloths to Grace's forehead, trying to drip water between her parched lips. The other children drifted in and out, unable to sleep, unable to stay away. Even Maggie came sitting in the corner with tears streaming silently down her face. Dawn came gray and cold, and with it a small miracle. Grace's eyes fluttered open. "Mama?" The word was weak, barely a whisper, but Clara heard it like thunder. "I'm here, baby. Mama's right here. Thirsty?" Clara's hands shook as she helped her daughter drink. Grace managed a few sips, then a few more, then closed her eyes and slipped into a natural sleep. Not the frightening unconsciousness of fever, but actual sleep, healing sleep. Doc Monroe returned that morning and confirmed what Clara already knew. "Fever's broken. She's through the worst of it." He smiled, a rare expression on his weathered face. "That's one tough little girl you've got there." "She takes after her mama," Jeremiah said. Clara burst into tears. She cried for Grace, for the terror of almost losing her. She cried for all the losses she'd suffered, the husband who'd become a monster, the homes she'd fled, the years of struggle and fear. She cried for the unexpected gift of Jeremiah Dawson, who had stood beside her through the longest night of her life without complaint or hesitation. And somewhere in that flood of tears, something inside her finally broke free. "I love you." The words were out before she could stop them, muffled against Jeremiah's chest, where she'd buried her face. She felt him go still. "Clara. I know it's soon. I know we said this was just an arrangement. But I love you, Jeremiah. Not because you saved us, not because you gave us a home, but because of who you are. Your patience and your kindness, And the way you look at my children, like they're the most precious things in the world." She pulled back, meeting his eyes, despite her tear-streaked face. "I love you, and if you don't feel the same, that's all right. I just needed you to know." Jeremiah cupped her face in his rough hands, thumbs brushing away her tears. "Clara Mae Dawson, I've loved you since the moment you stood in Martha Finch's kitchen and told me you'd rather die than give up your children. I loved you when you faced down Prudence Ashworth without flinching. I loved you when you said yes to marrying a stranger because it was the only way to keep your family together." His voice dropped to a whisper. "I loved my Sarah. Part of me always will. But the heart's a funny thing. Turns out it's got room for more than one great love. And you, Clara, you're my great love. My second chance. My reason for getting up in the morning and coming home at night." He kissed her, then gentle and deep, a promise and a pledge all wrapped up together. Clara melted into him, feeling the last of her walls crumble, the last of her fears finally releasing their grip. When they broke apart, Sam's voice came from the doorway. "About time." Clara whirled to find all 7 of her children gathered there, various expressions of amusement and satisfaction on their faces. "You were watching," she sputtered. "Hard not to when you're making that much noise," Ben said cheerfully. "Josie said you'd figure it out eventually. She owes me a nickel." "I said they'd figure it out by spring," Josie protested. "It's still technically winter." "Children." Clara tried to sound stern, but she was laughing too hard. "This is not appropriate." "Mama loves Papa Jem," Ruth announced. "That's good. Now we're a real family." Clara froze. "What did you call him?" Ruth looked uncertain. "Papa Jem is that wrong. He's not our real papa, but he acts like one. So I thought maybe—" Jeremiah crossed the room and knelt in front of the little girl. "Ruth, I would be honored to be your Papa Jem. All of you." His eyes swept across the children. "If you want me." "I want you," Ruth said immediately. "Me too," Ellie chimed in. "Yeah, okay," Ben agreed, trying to look nonchalant and failing completely. One by one, the children gave their consent. Even Sam, who'd carried the burden of being the man of the family for so long, nodded with something like relief in his eyes. Only Maggie hesitated. Clara's heart ached watching her middle daughter struggle. Maggie had suffered the most from Thomas's cruelty, had learned to fear men in ways that couldn't be unlearned in a few months. "Maggie," Jeremiah's voice was gentle, "you don't have to decide right now. You don't have to decide ever if you don't want to. I'll still be here either way. I'll still care for you and protect you and make sure you have everything you need. The name doesn't matter." Maggie's lower lip trembled. "Papa hit Mama. He hit us too sometimes." "I know, sweetheart. Your mama told me." "Will you hit us?" "Never." The word was absolute. "I will never ever raise a hand to you or your mama or any of your brothers and sisters. That's a promise, Maggie. And I don't make promises I can't keep." Maggie stared at him for a long moment. Then slowly she crossed the room and wrapped her arms around his neck. "Okay," she whispered. "Okay, Papa Jem." Jeremiah's eyes closed, and Clara saw tears leak from beneath his lashes. He held Maggie like she was made of glass, precious and fragile, and finally starting to heal. Spring came slowly to Montana, but it came. The snow melted, revealing the land beneath green shoots, pushing through the cold earth. The children burst out of the house like prisoners, released, running and playing, and making up for months of confinement. Clara stood on the porch, watching them, a hand pressed to her stomach where new life was just beginning to grow. She hadn't told Jeremiah yet, but she would tonight. Another child, this one born of love rather than duty. This one wanted and planned and welcomed. "Beautiful, isn't it?" Jeremiah joined her, sliding an arm around her waist. Together they watched their family play. Sam was teaching Ben to rope the younger boy's throws, wild but enthusiastic. Josie sat under a tree with Grace in her lap, reading aloud from a book of fairy tales. Maggie and Ruth were picking wildflowers, their heads bent together in sisterly conspiracy. And Ellie was dancing in circles, arms spread wide, embracing the sunshine. "I never thought I'd have this," Clara said softly. "A home, a family, peace. You deserve it. So do you." She turned to face him. "Jeremiah, I have something to tell you." "I know." "You know." He smiled that rare, full smile that transformed his weathered face. "Noticed a few things. You've been sick in the mornings, won't touch coffee anymore, and you've got this glow about you that wasn't there before. And you're not upset." "Upset." Jeremiah pulled her closer. "Clara, I'm terrified and thrilled and about 15 other things all mixed together. But upset never." He pressed a kiss to her forehead. "Another child. Our child. How could I be anything but grateful?" Clara buried her face in his chest, breathing in the scent of him, leather and wood smoke and home. "I love you," she mumbled against his shirt. "Love you too. Both of you." That evening, they gathered the children and shared the news. The reactions ranged from excitement to mild disgust depending on the age of the child. "Another baby." Ben wrinkled his nose. "We already have Grace. How many do we need?" "As many as God sends us," Clara said firmly. "I hope it's a girl," Ruth declared. "We need more girls." "We have 5 girls and 2 boys," Sam pointed out. "How many more do you need?" "More." The argument devolved into cheerful bickering, and Clara let it wash over her like music. This was her family now, loud and chaotic and absolutely perfect. Later that night, after the children were in bed, Clara sat on the porch with Jeremiah watching stars emerge in the darkening sky. "I was thinking," she said, "about everything that happened, everything that led us here." "What about it?" "If Thomas hadn't died, I'd still be in that house, still afraid, still watching my children learn that love comes with bruises." "Don't think about that." "I have to, because here's the thing, Jeremiah. I used to think my life was a series of disasters. Marriage to a man who turned cruel, 7 children I couldn't afford to feed, running from town to town, never belonging anywhere. But now I look back and see something different." "What do you see?" "A path. Every terrible thing that happened pushed me closer to here. To you. To this life we're building together." Clara's voice was wondering. "I'm not saying God planned it or fate arranged it. I'm just saying maybe the worst things in our lives can lead to the best things, if we're brave enough to keep going." Jeremiah was quiet for a long moment. Then he pulled something from his pocket, a small wooden horse, roughly carved, but made with obvious care. "I started making this the night you said yes to marrying me. Figured Evan or one of the children might like it. But now I'm thinking I'll save it." "Save it for what?" "For the new baby." He turned the little horse over in his hands. First toy from their father. Something to remember that from the very beginning they were wanted. Loved. Chosen. Clara took the horse, running her fingers over the careful work. "It's beautiful." "It's rough. I'll get better with practice." "It's perfect." She leaned her head against his shoulder. "Everything is perfect." They sat together in the darkness, 2 people who had found each other through pain and loss, and the desperate hope that tomorrow might be better than today. 2 people who had chosen to build a life together, not because it was easy, but because it was right. Inside the house, 7 children slept peacefully for the first time in years. In Clara's belly, a new life grew, the first chapter of a story yet to be written. And in the sky above Montana, stars wheeled in their ancient patterns, bearing witness to one family's journey from darkness into light. Clara May Whitmore had come to Willowbrook with nothing but 7 children and a heart full of fear. Clara May Dawson would stay forever surrounded by love rooted in belonging, finally and completely home. Some stories end with princes and castles with riches and glory. But the truest stories, the ones that matter, end with something simpler and more profound. They end with family. They end with love. They end with a woman who refused to give up a man who opened his heart, and 7 children who learned that home isn't a place. Home is the people who choose you again and again every single day, and that kind of home once found lasts forever.